Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Historical Humans podcast. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. But before we get censored by the CCP, let me introduce us. My name is Justin Woods, and I'm joined today by my fellow co-hosts, Colum Coleman and Aaron Gilpin. And yeah, today we are talking about Tibet.
Yes, so we are discussing the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This is our second time discussing a Book of the Dead. I believe way back, very early in first season of Historical Humans, we covered the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is the one people are the most familiar with. Today we are covering Tibet's Book of the Dead, and the actual title of this book, given to it by the people who wrote it, is Bardo Thodol, which translates as liberation in the intermediate state through hearing. Which actually does tell you a lot about the book as we go through with its intended purpose and subject. It's all in the title. You know, it's the how-to guide of enlightenment.
We're already off to a great start when the English version of the name is already completely different than what the Tibetan version of the name is.
Yeah, what it actually translates to is like, it's the Book of the Dead. No, it's liberation in the intermediate state through hearing. That's like really long, man.
We need
It's not
something.
very catchy. It's never gonna make New York Times
Yeah.
bestseller.
You know,
Yeah.
the Egyptian Book of the Dead got really popular. Like, why can't we just mimic them?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think I have a copy of that.
It's American editorial companies all over.
No.
Are you telling me there were things in this world created that were not meant to entertain an American audience?
You're telling me we're J. Jonah Jameson?
Oh, you have no idea what's coming. Yeah, if this bothers you, as much as it's going to clearly bother them for the next 20 minutes as I annoy them with it.
I have actually didn't prior to this. I didn't really know about. I didn't really think there was something like this. I was just because I have a very limited knowledge of Buddhism, other than the fact that the Buddha reached enlightenment, and that story was Sun Wukong.
Yeah, but yes, this is a Buddhist text. It is a it is a text of a active major religion. And let's that I think it's a good time to get into it. So the book is written from a Buddhist perspective, as it is, you would expect of a religious text for Buddhism.
Wait, you mean a Buddhist wrote a
Yeah.
Buddhist text?
Yep, yep.
How
And
bizarre.
it is a work of medieval Tibetan prose. So it is it's not poetry. A lot of times people like to associate poetry, or at least poetics, with a lot of these works and books. The Egyptian Book of the Dead gets that a whole bunch because it's a collection of very short prayers, and some not so short prayers. So people kind of like to make it like it's some sort of Emily Dickinson poem, and it's not. Especially here with the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And it is a commentary on death and dying. The emphasis of the book is understanding the interconnectedness of all things, and it treats life as a constant cycle of change and impermanence, and it's sort of there to help you from clinging to what is an impermanent life, with the whole cycle of death going on.
Yeah, because there's a reincarnation.
Yeah. We'll get into that in a minute. Like the cycle of reincarnation and stuff. It's the idea is people really don't like dying, and this book is supposed to help you get over that.
I don't know why people are afraid of dying. I mean, Buddhism, you just start back over if you mess up, right?
Kinda, not really.
Yeah. So, it's the cycle. It's the cycle of dying. we'll get into a whole lot of Buddhism at the end of this. With the book, there's a lot of a lot of things that make it easier to understand what is going on with the book with a Buddhist context. However, we decide to save that for the end. But yeah, it's yeah, it's a I lost where I was. God dang it. Yeah,
It's
but yeah,
basically a
it's
guide for people to
yeah,
read and to understand what the next step in the process is, because that I think that's one of the things that scare people at a very innate level is,
well,
what happens when I die?
yeah,
Oh yeah, I spent a whole summer once thinking about that. It
yeah,
was awful. God, I don't miss 2018.
yeah. And I'm going to ignore the existential cry for help from my co-hosts and
There's
move
no
on.
doubt.
So the
I,
emphasis
I
of
I
this,
go to therapy for a reason.
yeah, so yeah, and we're all so glad for it. So the emphasis of
Maybe I
this
should have
book,
read this book.
the the emphasis, the emphasis. Hi, I'm back. The emphasis of this book is on a Buddhist concept called bardos, which is these liminal stages between death and rebirth. There are, I believe, uh, three bardoses, three transitions between dying and living again, which this book is meant to help guide people through. And I'm gonna skip down the notes a little bit just because this makes more sense to read here. So this book, it's meant to be read aloud. It's liberation through hearing.
Oh yeah,
Um,
okay.
so it's meant to be read aloud by a Buddhist preach. It's like a sermon. Um, but here's the thing, Aaron. You, Justin, me, all of us, we are not the intended audience of this book.
Thank God.
This book is meant to be read aloud to the dead,
Oh,
which
wait.
means that it is probably the only book in history that was published for the deceased.
So it's like a was it a requiem
Eulogy.
eulogy? That's it.
Um, yeah. Not really. So what it is it is recited to ease the passing of the deceased through death and rebirth, and it's meant to insist the consciousness into either breaking the cycle of death and rebirth or into attaining a favorable rebirth. As with Tibetan Buddhism in particular, there is a period of time after you are dead during which you can still experience the world through your senses in your body. So
Oh.
if someone were to read a book to you over your corpse, you would still be aware of that book being read. And this is the instructional guide of all right, here's how to how to get through everything that you're dealing with right now.
Oh no, it's an instructional pamphlet. So you're dead. What's
Yeah,
next?
yeah,
At least it's better than how
yeah.
they show up in the good
But,
place where you're sitting in a waiting
and,
room.
That's
and
basically.
incredibly irreverent analogy would be the ghost instruction manual from Beetlejuice.
Oh.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I would
and
love it.
yeah, there you go. Aaron's on board with the book again.
I've been on board mostly for for different reasons though.
Yeah, yeah, and these being Buddhist physics texts, they're often very very beautifully illustrated, especially the Tibetan ones. They did a thing called block illustrations, um, which is basically where you have entire like pressed pages of just art in the middle.
Oh.
It is they're very they they're very beautiful. They put a lot of money into the production of these things. And speaking of the production, we're going to get to I think our favorite part of this section, which is who wrote this book and how. So this is going to be the most historical part of the of today's episode, which is the book. So the book is traditionally attributed to a man called Had Masambhava. He is a 7th century Indian tantric Buddhist guru who is credited with introducing Buddhism to Tibet. Now, the reason we say traditionally attributed is because historians and practitioners of Buddhism disagree on when the book was first put out. Practitioners believe that Padmasambhava was, was the guru who, when he brought Buddhism into Tibet, first inscribed the first copies of this book. However, historians date the book to the 14th century, about 700 years after Padmasambhava, because that is the first time in which a physical copy of the book can be traced.
So it could be the possibility that's the first time it was written down, and the book was more. I mean, like possibility wise, it could have been brought like the tradition. I guess the religion could have been brought, and then it was written down later.
So
because I mean, in context, it's kind of the same.
Yeah, and that's kind of what appears to have happened. Is there's an ambiguous oral tradition leading up to this, because the first book, was found by a man named Karma Lingpa. Lingpa claimed to be a reincarnation of one of Padmasambhava's students, who was there to light the way and bring Padmasambhava's words back into Tibet as they were once again needed.
How do they know? How do they know they're the reincarnation of someone else?
I have no idea. You would have to get like an actual Buddhist Lama to explain that.
Well,
I do follow.
I know the Dalai Lama specifically. They lay out a number of relics associated with them from previous lives, and that's the way in which they vet it. Is the child has to look at these specific items out of thousands of items.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that would be something
I don't necessarily
similar.
know if that would be the case for Karma Lingpa, or with someone who isn't the head of the spiritual religion.
I will say though, I know there is some doubt on the dates purely based on it being oral tradition, but in a lot of cases, oral tradition was passed down prior to it being written down. So there could be a case where this was an oral tradition prior to it becoming an actual physical book, and this is just the first record of the physical version of it that we found.
Yeah, and that is kind of what it, that's kind of what it is. This is the first record of the physical book, and even this book is kind of debated on its existence.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
the one from the 14th century.
Yeah, the one from the 14th century.
Oh wow!
Because the Book of the Dead was transmitted orally into the 15th century, and the first printings of the book that are known printings that I could find, and that a lot of the sources referenced as the first known printings, are from the 18th century.
Oh,
and I'm assuming survivorship bias at this point.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
But at the same time, it's a mess trying to figure out when this book was written, who wrote it. It's one of those Homer's Odyssey kind of questions.
Why is it that every major
when did this originate?
Why is it that every major religious text has some sort of questionable origin?
Well, not every major religious text has some sort of questionable origin. Just this one is obfuscated to all hell. Some of them were just straight up written down by a guy, and we know that that's the guy who wrote them down because he wrote it day one.
He wrote on there saying, "Today I have written this."
Today this happened.
Well, it is helpful when you have a physical copy and the guy who is believed to have wrote it in the same place at the same time. That tends to help a lot. The historical figure and the text are in the same room together, which unfortunately Padmasambhava never is, and that's actually a very intentional decision on his part, as we'll get to later. But one of the interesting things I would like to go over before we get back into the life of this guru is so oral traditions are traditionally thought of as being like master to apprentice type things. I'm teaching you, so I tell you all the stories, and then you teach the next guy and tell him all the stories.
Yeah.
It's not how it worked for Bardo Fadol. Um, it was actually a fluid transmission, wherein students would tell each other parts of the Book of the Dead, and you would have this sort of crossover between different temples, sects, and schools throughout Tibet as the various Buddhist monks came into contact with each other. They would end up trading it with one another, creating was effectively a fairly coherent copy of the book, as no one temple is isolated enough to diverge from a central sort of agreed upon core.
Alrighty, and we are back. The recording here kind of messed up on us, but we were talking about how the book itself was very, very fluid and cohesive because all of the different groups within this, all the different temples, would come together to tell the same stories. Correct?
There was no barrier between students telling the Bardo Fadol to other students as they went on their pilgrimages throughout Tibet, which sort of let the book kind of stay integrated across Tibet.
So
not more so than it would have if it was, the master's eyes only.
So why did Padmasambhava, is that how you pronounce it, right?
Yeah, Padmasambhava. That is
Okay.
About as close as my English-speaking tongue can ever get.
So why did he bring it to Tibet? Like why leave his home and say, you know what, I'm gonna go to this region and I'm gonna teach them Buddhism.
I mean, you ever see Tibet? They just look like a Buddhist area. I mean, you got the wonderful temples up in the mountains and everything.
I know I told you to stop making fun of religion earlier. I'm gonna have to rescind that for this part right here.
Oh no. The viewers at home won't know that section. That's the lost lore.
Yeah.
Oh.
We had a brief discussion about about religious cohesion and stuff off at the lost part of the camera. But like, we're gonna rescind that standing order for the time being because Padmasambhava brought Buddhism to Tibet at the invitation of the Tibetan Emperor Trisong Detsen, who ruled from about 755 to 797 CE. His death is entirely unknown. We have no idea when he died.
He just transcended.
Yeah, that's actually pretty common in a lot of places. Like I remember, like Romulus just ascended into heaven. Jesus did.
Romulus didn't ascend into heaven. He was murdered brutally in the street, and that's the story everyone told so they wouldn't get in trouble.
Romulus? I thought he ascended into heaven.
He ascends into heaven after being stabbed.
Oh. Whoops.
It's horrifying. So it's like,
But this guy just goes poof.
We can't have killed a god.
This guy just goes poof, though, right? Like, is God? Yeah. Well, like somebody just wakes up one day, he's like, "Hey, where is he?"
I don't think people just go poof, though, Aaron.
The written records of 8th century Tibet are somewhat lacking, shall we say. And the exact death of a king, or I should say emperor here, is not one of the things that has made it down to us. But we can kind of guess about when he died.
I didn't even know there was an empire in Tibet. That's news to me. I want to know more.
That's just your Western centricism, Aaron.
I'm sorry, my high school history class didn't exactly teach me anything.
Yes. Wonderful. The world according to world history. Europe and in the United States of America.
With a brief stop off in Central America and just a little touchdown in Africa.
Don't forget Asia. Don't forget Japan specifically.
Only after the 17th century, though, when the Europeans got in contact with them.
Yeah. Yes. Anyway,
Matthew Perry.
The reason Emperor Trisong Detsen brings Padmasambhava to Tibet is because He wants Tibet to be purged of dark spirits that are plaguing the land. And
Wait, what?
yeah, there are according to the traditions and history of Tibet, Padmasambhava was brought to Tibet to free the land from dark spirits. And
Oh,
Padmasambhava did. He goes into the land and subdues these dark spirits and makes them guardians of the cosmic law of Dharma, which is the Buddhist religious law.
oh, see, I thought he just kind of wandered in. I thought, like, I
No,
just like read
he
the
was
notes wrong. Like, I thought he wandered in and said, "Sir, there are dark spirits here, and I shall banish them."
no,
But no, he was actually invited. Okay.
he's invited by the emperor, but subdued the dark spirits of the land and made them good and holy people.
How do we know he wasn't a vampire? Especially if he was specifically invited in.
It's like St. Patrick purging all the snakes from Ireland. It's not a literal snake.
Oh.
They're getting rid of all the heathens.
They're just draining the swamp. What do you mean?
Oh no. Well, that's not the turn I was expecting.
Yeah. Isn't that lovely?
So
Isn't that lovely, boys and girls? We're
so
subduing the dark spirits, everybody.
well. So he just dispels them, and
Yeah, he subdues them.
what happens next?
It's
Is like
specific. The specific word I found in every source about this was subdue. So some sort of conquest is going on right now.
what happens? Is this around the time when that emperor goes poof?
No, this is during his reign. Padmasambhava has a long and well-received history into that. Because as he's going around doing this, or maybe a little while after, Padmasambhava enlists the help of one Yeshi Soygat, who assists him in writing the Book of the Dead. Now, Yeshi here was the wife or consort of the emperor. So, very important woman. She's believed to be.
That's why he disappeared.
Yeah, she is believed to be among the first students of Padmasambhava, and she is known as the mother of Tibetan Buddhism. She is a very important figure, and this is where Tibetan Buddhism really kind of starts to get some props. Is through her a little bit.
So Buddhism was installed more of in a top-down kind of fashion rather than a bottom-up.
The emperor called a guru in to convert the population. Yes, it's a top-down integration. It's sort of like the Spanish calling in all those monks to the new world.
Oh no.
Except this time we only needed one.
The Tibetan Inquisition?
Oh no! Nobody expects the Tibetan Inquisition.
Yeah. It's just a bunch of people in orange robes telling you to be at peace.
Oh no!
Oh boy.
Anyway, and it is believed that Yeshi here was an early devotee of the goddess Tara, which is a principal deity of esoteric Buddhism, which is the overarching branch of Buddhism that Padmasambhava belonged to. Tantric Buddhism is a part of esoteric Buddhism. It's bigger and bigger rings. I guess the easiest way to explain it to our to the generally Western audience that we have is how like both Lutheranism and Calvinism are Protestants.
Not every Protestant's a Calvinist, but every Calvinist is a Protestant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That kind of thing. And the part of this is why Tibetan Buddhism gets some props for having Yeshi around is this worship of Tara, because Tara, her main focus is equality of the sexes and bringing women to seek enlightenment.
All right, we are back yet again. More technical difficulties in humans, unfortunately.
Yeah. Here we are with technical difficulties in history. You won't notice it, but we sure as all hell do.
This is the cursed episode.
Yes. Something doesn't want us talking about this, and I think it might be the subject we'll be talking about right after we finish with Yesi Tsoigel. So, being one of the two key figures of Tibetan Buddhism, there's that equality that kind of gets baked in just a little bit into the overall structure of Tibetan Buddhism. And unfortunately, rather fortunately, I should say, Yeshi is canonically attained enlightenment, which means she will no longer be returning to Earth to spread wisdom or live among us. She has achieved liberation, which is the goal of the Bardo Fodol, the book she helped write.
I wonder what liberation's like.
I don't know. It seems nice.
Not having to worry, free of your worldly livelihood.
Yes. And one last key thing that she did alongside Padmasambhava is she hid copies of the Book of the Dead to be discovered by worthy individuals when they were most needed.
Are you kidding me?
Which is the entire premise of Karma Lingpa and his proclamation of being a former student of Padmasambhava reincarnated, and finding one of these books hidden away in a mountainside and spreading it with the world.
Oh my god. I love this.
It all ties together canonically in a nice, neat little bow that none of history can verify.
I love it. I love this so much. Are you going to be the next person to find the next Tibetan Book of the Dead? Oh. Find out.
I feel like to you, this is just Takeshi's Castle Generations Edition.
I like this. This is great. She hid all those books. It's like they're just waiting to be found.
I wrote
like the One Piece
to liberation of the human soul, and then I hid it from the world so no one could have it for hundreds of years.
I think you guys aren't looking at this at the right way. Like, this is our quest. This is the destiny. We must go to collect them all.
This is our One Piece?
This is achievement hunting gone extreme.
They're not Pokemon. This is not the Holy Grail.
Well, it's the Book of the Dead.
Kill a rabbit.
No, not with the Holy Hand Grenade.
Yeah.
The Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch. Tibetan Monty Python.
Tibetan Monty Python is so much
We already have the Tibetan Inquisition. We're halfway there.
Oh, we might as well.
But speaking of needless westernization, I would like to draw attention to a man of the 20th century, a man by the name of Walter Evans Wentz.
A white man? No!
Who is responsible for the first translation of Bardo Fodol into English in 1927. And I use the term responsible because, well, he is the guy who ultimately made it happen. He is not, however, really the translator.
Anytime you say anthropologist in 1920 anything,
yeah,
you gotta be a little suspicious.
Here's how the story goes. Wentz is an anthropologist specializing in spiritualism and religion, out in sort of the area of India, Tibet, that kind of just general, Nepal-esque, mountainside region. He is friends with a shall we say, local British governor by the name of Major W.L. Campbell, who, while touring Tibet, as one does, brought back a number of beautiful copies of the Book of the Dead, which he could not read. So he presented to his, anthropologist friend to, translate and understand whatever the hell this is. Those people were valuing it a whole lot, and it cost me money.
God, it's always the British.
The good old age of exploration, too, when a well-to-do academic could just happen upon an important document and just pay for it.
Oh, no, not an academic.
Yeah, Campbell was
a
Brit.
British military officer could happen upon an important religious text, take it, and then give it to his academic friend.
That's what I mean, like, to be able to just go, yeah, I acquired this for money, now translate it. This is my glory. I always mention Pitt Rivers, who was another British military officer that just traveled the world and collected things. He just collected stuff he thought was interesting and organized it in curio cabinets.
I think they're neat.
Yeah, basically. This is important. I had to kill the person who had it, but...
Yeah.
Oh, God. British curiosity cabinets.
All right, so continuing, this guy translated the book, right?
Yes, and it is him. He did not translate the book. He is the man responsible for having the book translated. Wentz had a relatively poor understanding of the Tibetan language, but he would not let that stop him.
The British confidence, too. I love it.
Yeah. And when he gets this book translated, he takes some creative liberties.
Oh, no.
Namely, the title, which he decides to title The Tibetan Book of the Dead. Because I want to say 60 years prior, I want to say 1867, the Egyptian Book of the Dead had been translated. Wentz had read it, and he noticed similarities that he decided were enough to basically claim cultural migration from Egypt to Tibet.
I made a joke about that earlier. I made a joke. So he read it, went, yeah, that's a catchy title. Yoink.
Yeah. That similarity was the idea of Bardo, was the concept that there are, shall we say, stages through which the soul passes after death. The Egyptians had this concept. The Buddhists in Tibet have this concept. You know what didn't have this concept? The British Christians. Because you die and you instantaneously, like, Minecraft spawn into, like, the nether.
Oh no, you spawned into a lava pit?
Imagine if that's actually what happened instead of, like, having to actually just a Minecraft server on peaceful or creative.
Yeah.
Just as long as I'm not surrounded by 12-year-olds, I'll be alright.
That's hell.
Hell. Yeah.
My house got griefed again!
Blasphemy aside.
Basically, his religion just had the idea that you die, you appear in the next life, whatever that is for you, heaven, hell, purgatory, all that. The Tibetans and the Egyptians both had this idea that there is a journey for the soul, that the soul undertakes between dying and reaching the next phase of existence. And that was enough to say they're basically the same and slap a knockoff title on it.
Sounds about right.
I'm actually more... I don't know if I should be impressed or, like, appalled by the fact that this man actually read the entire Book of the Dead. Because that thing is long. Like, the Egyptian one. That thing is long. Like, that's not something you read for fun.
Yeah, the Egyptian one is like 600 pages.
Well, he was an anthropologist.
Yeah.
I don't care.
But we also talked about his understanding of the language, correct?
Yeah, he has a poor understanding of the language. which is ironic since Wentz's translation becomes the standard English translation of the Tibetan Book of the Dead of
God damn it.
Bardo. Fortunately, it's not as bad as you think because Wentz had the brilliant idea to enlist a ghostwriter by the name of Lama Kazi Dawa Samdu.
Oh, so you actually had somebody who could speak the language do this.
Oh, so like any
Yeah.
good academic, he had some unpaid intern helping him out. Well, I guess in this case
No,
he
it's
was
a
paid,
No,
but
it's a lama. It's a spiritual guide in Buddhism. And Samdup was a teacher at a local school in Sikkim, which was where Major Campbell was stationed, which is where Wentz was working out of. And yeah, Wentz's translation is probably more Samdup's work than Wentz's, as Samdup dies in 1926, and Wentz just fills in whatever parts aren't done by Samdup and publishes it the next year.
wow.
God damn.
That's heartless. And so we talked about this off screen. There's a new Indiana Jones movie, and one of the scenes, there's no spoilers here, but one of the scenes, Indy immediately deciphers and decrypts an encrypted tablet and like translates it instantly, and it drives me nuts because translation processes are not quick by any stretch of the imagination, and like they're difficult. We understand some of the languages, but trying to figure out what context, what form, what word, or what version of the word they're trying to say is
Like like none of it makes sense until you have the whole text put together, and sometimes you might not want to use a certain English word when you have the full context. You might like other words might be appropriate to get the right meaning, but you don't know that right away.
Yeah. You can see there's a number of places you can go on the internet and see things where like billion-dollar companies have mistranslated stuff from one language to another. My personal favorite is the "taste like grandma's" translation, losing the possessive and becoming "tastes like grandma"
oh.
for a lot of food products.
See,
God, I can't tell you how many versions of like the Aeneid are there. Tell me how many through the years.
my personal favorite is the British Museum's approach to translation,
Oh
where
God.
they just yoink they just yoink the work of someone else, don't attribute them, and then when they're called out for it, then they go, oh, and just remove it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, to be fair to the British Museum, the person who did the translation was living in Canada, which means they are a subject of the British Empire and should be grateful to have been noticed by the motherland.
God damn.
That was the single most colonial take this whole podcast, and there's been a lot.
Yes, it is. And that is pure irony for those of you who don't understand irony.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
The thing is, it's true. It's kind of true.
Anyway,
For the British.
At
Yeah.
least. Samdup had the advantage of being, a native speaker, and he was known he was actually a well-renowned translator for Tibetan to English. He famously helped a travel writer named Alexandra David Neal. A lot of hyphenated names in this show today. Basically, write her travel guides for the most of Central Asia.
I didn't think there were travel guides for that.
Oh,
At least back then.
It's the early 20th century.
Oh,
the
right.
whole idea of visit a country with this book of things to look at is very much still in vogue. All right, we have Hercule Poirot running around solving mysteries on Nile steamboats still.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, so that whole idea of travel writing, it's still very much a thing where they're doing this old school travel writing. By the way, if you read travel guides today and you look at the old school ones, don't look at the old school ones.
Well, now I have to
No.
because I need to know how awful they were.
Very.
Well, yeah,
Don't
now
get
I
me
gotta
wrong,
do
they
it.
were accurate about what was there. It's just you understand a lot of the values of the society based on how they're describing these things.
Oh, it hurts because I
Uh,
Maybe we
have
should read one for
seen.
fun.
No, Aaron,
yeah,
no.
no,
Justin's bro.
I'm not doing it.
Oh,
Justin.
yeah, we're good. I think we're still rolling.
Okay.
But yeah,
I'm,
that would be awful just to go through and read them of like old timey ways in which the British like to describe some of the unique and very foreign locations that they got to visit.
yeah. Now, fun fact.
How is this more
Alex,
sad than talking about dying?
yeah.
Because it's
Fun
the
fact.
British.
But fun fact. Fun fact. Alexandra David Neal was not British.
Oh.
She was French and Belgian.
That's like diet British.
The
Oh,
French and the British would strongly disagree with you.
I know,
the
I just said that to upset the French.
Yeah.
they're rioting right now. Good for them. Let them riot. It's fine. They're doing good things.
I thought that's not the quote. Let them eat cake.
No, I want them to riot. They're having fun. Or well, no, I wouldn't say having fun. They're rioting for good reasons.
Listen. In France, a riot is like a block party. It happens every day.
Oh my god. How many... Yeah. Riots and churches burning.
How many nations are we going to attack in this episode about a Tibetan book?
All of them were like the British Empire.
All right. We're bring that in. So Wentz, he's got his hand. He's not just letting Samdup do all the work. Wentz has got his hand on the translation, and he makes sure that it has his own unique bend to it, his own unique flavor.
I'm scared.
And that is what is known as theosophical, which is basically philosophizing on religion.
Still scared.
This interpretation was supported by his proofreader, Carl Jung.
And I have been vindicated. I've been vindicated for my fear.
The founding father of psychology and best friend and #1 firm believer of Sigmund Freud.
They were roommates.
Yeah. Let me put it to you this way. Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung agreed on everything until Carl Jung took Sigmund Freud's theories in Freud's belief one step too far and became too extreme for Freud.
How the fuck do you go too far with that?
Drugs.
I didn't think there was well, there it is.
Drug therapy.
Yeah, they did a lot of that.
I knew Freud did, but
Carl Jung had a whole thing with hallucinogenics. As
you gotta
medication.
expand your mind, man.
Yeah. He was like hippie in the 1920s.
Yeah. Basically, Carl Jung was the sort of psychologist to prescribe LSD for anxiety.
It opens your mind, man.
So you're telling me in the 1920s,
LSD did not exist, but yes, it is an anachronistic
he was used.
statement.
So you're telling me, real quick, you're telling me in the 1920s in Vienna, while Sigmund Freud was doing coke, this man was doing hallucinogenics in the same room?
Probably, yes.
Yeah. Carl Jung had a thing about mushrooms.
God, they really just got away with anything in the 1920s.
Not to mention
Really?
Vienna. Look at all the prominent figures that have lived in Vienna over the years.
Yes.
God, I need a time machine. No, what?
Okay.
Anyways,
but yeah. So there's this, shall we say, very westernized religious bend to the English translation of it, of the Bardo Fodol. And because of this, the book has actually become a popular guide for self-transformation among the living.
Oh,
It's,
god damn it.
yeah,
It's a
it's
self-help book.
yep. People looking to free themselves from self-destructive behaviors, to end the cycle, to achieve liberation in life. All flock to this book, which, as a historian, it is very important to point out, is not the intended purpose of this book. This book is meant to be read to a corpse so that the soul of the deceased can find their way to nirvana, i.e., liberation.
I thought Nirvana was in Seattle.
I hate it here.
Oh, it's gonna get worse.
Of course it does.
Yep. Yeah. And the reason for all these changes was because Wentz was a spiritualist.
God
He was
damn
a
it.
man. He chose to go to to Central Asia to study their religion the same way that like people go there today as like a tourist pseudo rebirth thing.
So what you
Just
mean is he was like the
imagine
Beatles.
He's a
Sure.
fucking
They-
poser. He's a grifter.
Listen, just imagine for a second if people treated Western religions like they treat Eastern ones. Let's all go to Utah to get baptized and have a spiritual awakening, everybody.
Please don't
And
go to
then
Utah.
leave and never come back or mention it again, except at parties when we want to be pretentious.
Actually, you know what? Do that to Utah. Do that to Utah. They have it coming.
You know, I just like how they talk about Joseph Smith. That's all.
Listen, just please commodify their religion the same way this man commodified the Tibetan one.
Yeah. Oh,
Please do it. It's good revenge.
yeah. Oh, you want to know the best part of it all, Aaron? It has since been translated from the English into 21 other languages.
Gotta be shitting me.
You know,
they
they
translate it from the English version.
Most versions that aren't in a Central Asian language are translated from the English translation.
God damn it. English is already 3 languages in a top hat pretending to be its own.
That's what made it so easy. The French and the Germans already had a head start.
Why?
I don't know if anyone at home has ever played the telephone game where you just whisper things into someone else's ear and you basically go down a line of like 15 people and the phrase changes and it morphs. That's what happens with these translations, because one translation to another, things change, and then from another language to a different one, it just further gets lost in translation.
Yeah.
Makes
Yeah,
you
you
think
wanna-
about how accurate your Bible is, don't you?
Listen. You want to hear something really horrifying?
Oh,
I
thank
looked
you.
I looked into trying to find copies of this book, to potentially read from for our Historical Humans Read section. The preface and intro and commentary and all that stuff for the book is 181 pages long in the shortest format I could find.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah, and the commentaries that people have put in this book ranged to anything from scholastic debates among anthropologists to interpretations from Buddhist guides. Everyone wants a piece of this pie, and it has created a preamble longer than the actual book.
Oh my God.
So much discourse.
There probably shouldn't have to be, because if this man just left everything alone.
It's a 300 and some page book, and almost 200 pages of it is just people talking about what you need to know to understand this translation.
God damn you, Wentz.
Yep. But yeah, that is.
I
that is
feel
Wentz. Yeah.
so defeated.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. You feel defeated right now, and so to help ease your soul, let's.
I think I actually need that.
Let's talk about some of the principles in Bardo Fadol, some of the Buddhist concepts that's related to, all the things that Wentz most definitely did not butcher.
At all. Not
Yeah,
whatsoever.
and that is once again almost entirely thanks to Kazi Dawa Sembu, because that man basically saved this thing. But yeah, so Buddhist reincarnation works relatively it's actually a pretty complex mechanism when you think about it. So the simple version is your soul or your consciousness is reincarnated into a new form after you die. If you achieve enlightenment, you are freed from the cycle of death and reverse and are essentially become one with, Buddha, with the universe, with the spiritual energy that permeates all things. You are no longer forced to live and die over and over and over and over again. Sounds pretty nice. Now, when you die, you are drawn by your karma to your new form. Now, karma, interestingly enough, is the consequences of your actions. And it says nothing about the intent.
What?
Good intentions. From what just base level stuff I could gather for this, good intentions don't matter. The road to hell is paved with them. It's the consequences of your actions that matter.
Not the consequences of my own actions.
Because the consequences of my action coming for me right now.
Basically.
Yeah. And you can be reincarnated depending on your karma as one of 6 things. Number 1 is the suffering spirit, where you endure horrible torture for a lifetime.
What?
Yeah. Number 2 is the wandering ghost, where you are an entity driven by an insatiable craving.
Craving for revenge. I will haunt you.
Like any craving? Like, could there be a ghost craving cake constantly?
Have you seen the Ghostbusters?
Yeah, Slimer.
Yeah. Like, let's not pretend gluttony's not on the list. You can be reincarnated as the animal ruled by pure instinct.
Revenge.
Yeah. You
Whack.
can be reincarnated as the demigod, a creature lustful for power.
And revenge.
You can be reincarnated as a human, which
Ooh.
is the balance of intellect and reason, which is why Buddhism kind of thinks that humanity is the moment to make the jump to break the cycle. Because if you draw a human out of this little lot drawing contest, you got your best chance. Because the next form, the 6th and final form, is the god, which is a creature that lives for so long it has become deluded into believing it is immortal and has basically gone high on its own ego.
Wow.
How do you wait? So like you're only a spirit for like roughly a lifetime, so you're not actually dying, right?
I think about that. Buddhism, like a lot of these concepts are like, what do you mean suffering spirit? What do you mean, wandering ghost? Buddhism is interacting with a lot of other religions throughout Central Asia, throughout, India and Pakistan, throughout China and Japan. So it has to deal with, like in Journey to the West, it has to deal with like the court of the Jade Emperor and explain all of these things that people, have proof of and believe in, and it has to explain, basically all these other religions that's running into. Because Buddhism is, the encompassing of all spirits, and if everyone is running around saying, "Look at these things, they are gods," well, you got to explain that somehow.
Yeah, that's just Dave. He got a little too high at his ego while being a god.
Yeah. And gods are just things that live so long, they forget they can die. Then Sun Wukong reminds them.
Son of a
It won't
god.
be too long till Kratos comes.
Yes, precisely.
Zeus, face me.
Yeah, this is beautiful. Um, and Tibetan Buddhism naturally has its own take on this system. Tibetan Buddhism is known as Vajrayana or Tantric Buddhism. It emerged in Central Asia, and what is unique to Tantric Buddhism is the concept of bardos, the idea of a liminal transitional period from death to rebirth. The cycle is not instantaneous according to the Tantric Buddhists.
Wait,
Yeah,
you said it came out of Central Asia?
yeah.
It, I don't know if if I'm remembering this correctly, but I think in Zoroastrianism there is also a sort of period between the moment of like before you ascend into the afterlife,
Yeah.
if there is one for them. I can't quite remember, but I do remember there is like a
Yeah. So
specific moment like that.
yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah. So yeah, with Zoroastrianism, that's actually just outside of Central Asia. That would be in Iraq and Iran, which I think is just like the bordering state.
Okay.
The bordering political entity has Zoroastrianism, and Buddhism tends to take a lot of notes on what is going on in all the religions it brushes up against. Buddhism likes to not so much incorporate their beliefs, but incorporate an understanding of what these people are doing. It's
Okay.
it's a very understanding religion, even as it condemns your gods as just deluded, as just people with delusions of grandeur. It at least takes the time to understand what's going on before it condemns you.
Okay.
Um, yes, and this Bardos period lasts exactly 49 days. And I have no idea why it's 49 days. Could not find that.
It's not 49 days between the
Yeah,
moon
yeah,
phases
but
of the moon.
49 days from the moment you kick the bucket to the moment you wake up in a new body.
That's gotta be weird.
Yeah, it is. And there are actually three transition periods between um, dying and rebirth. The first is the moment of death. The third is the transition into your new body, and it's the second one where things start going wrong, and the Bardo Thadol is meant to intervene. Uh, because in the second phase, which is the encountering of mystical knowledge and apparitions, the doors of the universe are flung open and you see all of reality for what it is.
Oof, that can't be
And
hard.
that is a maddening Cthulhu-esque prospect.
That's a comprehension that's like, oof.
Yeah. Yeah. You are also beset upon by apparitions. You become aware that you have died, and the ghosts of all your actions, of everything you have ever done in life, all your karma, comes at you all at once. It's like your life flashing before your eyes, but far more unpleasant, where
What?
everything you've ever felt guilty about comes screaming at you about what a horrible person you are.
There's good karma though, right?
Yeah, there is good karma, but it's the bad karma you got to watch out for.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So they only
Because,
show you the bad things, not the good things?
well, you see all of it, but the bad
Oh.
karma comes and starts trying, like, the bad karma comes and starts trying to drag you down. It's like depression.
Oh.
It tries to cloud your whole judgment.
Yeah, tell me
You
about
are
it.
a bad person. You are a bad person. You don't deserve this. Just
Yeah,
over
get
and
it.
over again. And every little thing you've ever felt bad about in your entire life just runs at you. It's very overwhelming.
Tell
And
me about it.
yeah, yeah. And this confuses the soul and can cause it to be drawn into an unfavorable or undeserved reincarnation. the Bardo Thedol is read to the dead to sort of calm them down, let them know it's okay, that they're safe, that being dead means nothing can hurt you, and everything's going to be all right. And it lets them sort of see the true path that's been laid before them, hopefully to liberation. But, not always. Not everyone's going to make it.
It's kind of a nice, like, fail-safe,
Yeah. It's a
See, growing up Catholic, I always banked on the 11th hour confessions. And we're back talking about the different aspects of the soul. Yet again, technical difficulties.
I think the ghost of Wentz is pissed at us.
Yeah, he's clearly haunting us.
Yeah, well, yeah, something's gotten into the power cables again.
So like moment of death, deceased is unaware, deceased set upon apparitions, the book, the recitations.
The book, the book is meant to ease it, ease the transition, prevent an unfavorable reincarnation, get you to, liberation. And it's based on what is a very reasonable and very interesting premise. And it's the idea that even the most perfect person out there is still human. They will have moments of weakness. They will have doubts. They will have fears. They will make mistakes. The most perfect human being will still accrue negative karma. And being weighed down by that might prevent someone from achieving, spiritual unity and liberation. So, the book is, trying to mitigate the effects of our mistakes on our souls. And that's actually a very nice thing. That's sort of that's very much a gentler, more human aspect of Buddhism and of religion in general. That it's okay to be wrong.
No.
Yeah. Listen, Justin. I know you wanted to do the 11th hour stuff. It's like, remember, according to the devil and Christian religion, one sin or 1,000, you're still going here.
Gotta collect them all if you're gonna go.
That's why I shall repent on my deathbed.
Yeah. All that stuff. Yeah. And so with Tibetan Buddhism, the deceased still understands words and prayers spoken on its behalf. It can still hear you when you pray over it. And these prayers can increase your chances of attaining enlightenment. So it's very important in Tibetan Buddhism, in Tantric Buddhism, to get to the dead person as soon as possible and begin the reading. Because the sooner you start, the better chance they have.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, like, people who end up going off to war and being slain on the battlefield. I wonder how they would have, like,
I believe it's the acceptance that you can't save everybody.
Yeah, like that's what I was thinking, because like I remember specifically during like times of famine or plague that because traditionally in older Christianity, ground had to be consecrated to bury the dead, but sometimes the dead was just like the burials were just happening so fast that you would have a process of bury them first, sanctify the ground later.
Yeah, that's how you get zombies, everybody.
Oh no.
The dead are buried in unconsecrated grounds, and their souls are coming back for vengeance, for they wander amongst us.
Yeah, that's kind of how early zombies, like revenants.
Yep. Yeah, there you go. There's the origins. Undead returning. Yes, and so the recitation of the of the Bardo Thedol would continue throughout the whole 49-day period. The man is just reading these prayers over and over again over the dead person for 49 days.
That's a long time.
Yeah. And the person reciting these prayers, of course, must be performed by a lama or a spiritual teacher, which meant you had to go and book somebody for, a month and a half just to make sure the soul got to the other side.
Just be like, excuse me, I would like to book an appointment. Grandpa is on death's door right now, and it's like, do you think you can make it another few months? I'm pretty booked.
At least a week and a half. This last one's gonna take me just a little while longer. Can Grandpa hold on, or can you guys just make something happen?
I do sincerely hope, given just the ratio of people to actually well-trained spiritual guides, that there is some sort of like group therapy version of this where you've got like 5 people lined up and are just praying over them all in turn.
Oh, I'm sure they have figured out a way to like streamline like this kind of process, because just one priest or lama for like one person is a lot. I feel like it's kind of like where they might have like all the village, like probably like for whatever 49 period, they have like a bunch of the dead all together.
They just walk in the morgue, open up all the drawers, and just start reciting.
I mean, I get, because are they buried at this point?
I do not know. I do not didn't get
if they perform burials at all.
But I didn't really get a lot of the burial practices, unfortunately.
Because I would feel like if the body can still feel, like they believe like the body can still feel things, I feel like they would shy away from cremation.
Yeah, it's well, they're definitely not cremating you. You can still hear.
Yeah, that's why I was like,
I believe it is linked to your physical form having access to the senses.
Yeah, that's why I was like, it doesn't sound like they would want to do cremation. So I'm like, do they have? They might have done something, like something like some sort of preservation technique to like, if they didn't bury them, you know what I mean?
Or you can pray over the grave, because it is it is it's understood that they can sense what is being said on their behalf, so there is a degree of extrasensory perception going on, where it's the physical ears may not necessarily have to be within earshot, so long as you're doing it in their general vicinity and directing it specifically towards them.
That's interesting.
So I guess the argument that we're having here is there an AoE on these books?
Oh, an AoE, a spell effect. Oh,
listen, Justin, you've played too much D&D. Stop trying to cast Spirit Guardians.
To those listening at home that may not be familiar, AoE is area of effect. Basically, how far a spell can impact. And, we're talking about if one person can read for multiple bodies, it's...
I think it's... Listen, if you want to do D&D terms, I think it's more like the message spell. Where you just, it's like, I wouldn't normally be able to hear that.
Wow, we're all kind.
We're all over this place. We've committed so much sacrilege.
Everybody had to get their little bit of sacrilege.
If you're Buddhist and you know about this, let us know in the comments.
Yeah,
please. I'm actually very interested in what I'm very much interested in understanding of like the burial practices, if that's how it worked.
Just remember, be polite. This is something for everyone to see.
But I think that's a good point for us to wrap up this very interesting but technologically scuffed episode. If you guys enjoyed watching, please leave a like down below. Let us know if there's a topic you'd like us to see. And let us know what other things you would want to hear on the podcast. And we'll see you in the next episode.